everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Cheers. And I do want to talk a little bit about college football, and specifically the transfer portal. That is right. The regular season ends. Conference championship games are this weekend. But this is the time of year where all the chaos, I say it all the time, the gossip, the chisme, the silly season of college football. This is, in some ways, this is the most fun part of the year to follow and to cover and all that good stuff. And so we obviously have the coaching changes that have happened. National Signing Day is coming up. But also the transfer portal opens a week from now on December 4th. Here is the thing, though. Just because the transfer portal doesn't technically open for another week, guess what? It's not stopping some players from entering. Now, there are two types of players that can enter the transfer portal right now this second. You can enter the transfer portal if your coach has left the program. So if they've been fired, if they've been replaced, whatever. Once your coach gets fired, a Jimbo Fisher, a Zach Arnett, whatever, you have 30 days to enter the transfer portal from there, at least until it opens when everybody else goes in. Also, if you're a graduate transfer, you can enter now. And so I bring it up because Monday, we got the first wave of players that have either entered the transfer portal as either graduate transfers or players whose coaches have been fired. And we also got a bunch of names that plan on entering the transfer portal over the next week or so. So I want to dive in, couple big names, couple intriguing names, just a couple names to keep an eye on. Transfer portal isn't even open, and it's already humming, baby. All right, so let's dive in. A couple names to know. First of all, biggest name probably from an average college football fan perspective. Will Howard, quarterback, Kansas State, announced on Monday that as a graduate transfer, he is in fact entering the transfer portal. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say this kid is a perfect quarterback in any way, shape, or form. But over the course, obviously, by the way, 2 years ago, led Kansas State to a Big 12 title. He actually replaced Adrian Martinez. They got hot when he came in. And this year had a very solid year, 2,600 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions, completing 61% of his passes. Problem is they have a young quarterback named Avery Johnson. No, not the former NBA player. No, not the former Alabama basketball coach. Avery Johnson, it appears as though, is kind of emerging as the future of the program. So Will Howard is going to pursue options elsewhere. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. He's a pseudo dual threat guy. Not a great athlete, but doesn't kill you either. He's just a very solid across-the-board quarterback. It will be interesting to see. We know anyone could use a veteran. Anyone could use a fifth, sixth-year guy, especially one who has obviously led his team to a power conference championship. Will Howard, expect him to be a very viable and interesting name in the transfer portal. Staying with the quarterback position, this is an interesting one to me. Caden Hauser, who was basically Michigan State's starting quarterback over the back half of this year, he announced on Monday that he will enter the portal. He is only a redshirt freshman, I believe 2 years on campus, member of the high school class of 2022, I believe, 2021. So he's a redshirt freshman. He's got the COVID year, etc. I bring it up. He was very highly rated out of Southern California, and we will see what he decides to do. But experienced, started a bunch of games this year for Michigan State on the season, threw for 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns, did have 5 interceptions, but it's also worth noting, it wasn't as though he was in the most ideal situation at MSU. Keon Coleman, star wide receiver, transfers in the offseason. Coaching change with Mel Tucker, Harlan Barnett comes in. So there's all sorts of chaos. To his credit, he wins that job. He gets the opportunity. I thought he played pretty well down the stretch. Now, the win-loss record does not reflect it with Michigan State, but keep in mind, this was a team that really did not look good out of the gate. And then the final few weeks of the season, they went 2-2 in their last 4 games, beat Nebraska, beat Indiana. So I think this is an interesting guy. I think he's got a little bit more upside than Will Howard, the player I just mentioned. Keep an eye on him. I think he has a chance to be a very, very good college quarterback before it's all said and done. Staying at Michigan State, a couple other names to know. First of all, intriguing prospect in the backup quarterback at Michigan State, and that is Sam Levitt. Former top 100 prospect, according to On3's rankings, 4-star 24/7 Sports. Didn't get a ton of reps this year although he did play 4 games, which will allow him to redshirt, throwing for 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. Dual threat kid. He is originally from the state of Oregon, so another player that in theory could transfer closer to home. But Sam Levitt, another name to know there. And then Michigan State, it is worth noting, a couple starting offensive linemen, including a guy that I think you could argue is already one of the top priorities in the portal because he is a graduate and you can reach out to him, although because he's at Michigan State, you can reach out to him anyway. That is Spencer Brown. Starting tackle, started 20 games over the course of his career, played in 30 total during his time at Michigan State, been through 2 different coaching changes during his time there, decided to stay for the first one, not staying for the next one, and we'll be curious to see what happens there. Obviously, we know offensive line is a top priority, for every program in America. Every program can use O-line depth. Every program can use experience on the offensive line. Spencer Brown, keep an eye on this name. A very intriguing player from Michigan State. I think he has a chance to step in pretty much anywhere and start right away. And again, those big offensive linemen are very coveted in the portal. Let's go to a couple other names that are worth keeping an eye on, worth mentioning. First of all, this guy is very intriguing to me. Relik Brown, former top 100 prospect who began his career at USC. Interesting player, is from the state of California. And what was interesting about him, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was committed to Lincoln Riley when Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma. Then he ends up deciding that once Lincoln Riley comes to Southern California, he's a SoCal kid. He decides, you know what? I get to stay home and play for Lincoln Riley. As a freshman, he kind of got a little bit lost on that depth chart. But late in the year, you started to see him come on. Ironically, he played very well against Colorado, who, of course, that was the pre-Deion era. But Relik Brown, as a freshman, 16 catches, 175 yards, 10 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns. Kind of kid, explosive with the ball, catches it, can take off, can make guys miss. And he was one of those guys. I thought that there would be a bigger role for him at USC this year. Now, I get Zachariah Branch is really good. I get Brennan Rice was really good. I get that Taj Washington was really good at USC. But at the same time, it just never really clicked. His numbers regressed, his touches regressed, and Relik Brown decides to enter the transfer portal. I am here to tell you he is a very interesting name. He is a dynamic player with the ball in his hands. And he's the kind of guy, I think he will get basically attention from pretty much everyone in college football. And I think he is a guy that can make plays at any level. Again, 10 yards per catch as a true freshman at USC. I expect big things from him wherever he ends up. Kind of stunned that Lincoln Riley couldn't find better ways to use him. But let's be honest, it wasn't a great year for Lincoln Riley overall. Speaking of skill position guys, really interesting name from Notre Dame. Chris Tyree. How about this? Chris Tyree, former running back, converts to wide receiver. And he was Notre Dame's leading receiver this past year. 26 catches, 3 touchdowns, 484 yards. Every time I watched Notre Dame, this dude was making plays. I don't know exactly if it was because Sam Hartman's leaving, because he wants to switch. I don't know exactly why, but this kid was dynamic with the ball in his hands. He played for a good team, but as a graduate transfer, he has decided to move on. So it'll be fascinating to see what he decides to do. It'll be fascinating to see what's next for him. But he's another one like Relik Brown. I think wherever he goes, I think he could go to the highest of the high majors. And I'm not going to, speculate on schools. But you could play at Notre Dame. You can play pretty much anywhere. Could go to one of the big boys. Could go to kind of one of those, kind of a comparable type school. Could play anywhere in the Power 5. Chris Tyree, a name to note. And then the last one that I want you to keep an eye on. Can't technically enter the portal just yet, but it became clear that he is leaving. Chris Paul Jr., a.k.a. Pooh Paul, from the Arkansas Razorbacks. This one stings for Arkansas. So it's interesting, right? Because Sam Pittman, remember, before it was officially announced that he was coming back, what did he say at that press conference, a month ago or 2 weeks ago? He said, guys, I know you have jobs to do, but when you speculate on my job, it hurts recruiting. Then they announce that he's coming back and the locker room goes crazy and everybody's happy. Well, on Monday, the best player in the program, arguably, at least on the defensive side of the ball, announces that, he didn't really officially announce it, but it's reported that he is going to be leaving the program and transferring when the window opens up. Redshirt sophomore, 30-year college football player, and a really, really talented linebacker. 74 tackles this year. That was second on the team, 6.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. If you watched Arkansas, this dude was all over the field. The defense was kind of up and down this year. Not very good necessarily in the post-Barry Odom world. Defense had their moments, but they also struggled at various points as well, regardless. Chris Paul Jr., Pooh Paul, it's a crushing loss for Arkansas, who really, frankly, cannot afford to lose guys like this. Sam Pittman is coming back. We've talked about it on this show. You don't need me to get into it, but it is a devastating loss for them, as they apparently are going to lose him to the portal. Again, he is a player that can't officially enter until December 4th. And I'll tell you this, if you like portal stuff, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We'll be talking about this once the portal opens, once commitments and recruitments and visits and all that start coming up. We'll be talking about this stuff nonstop for the entire month of December. So make sure you're subscribed. More names to come. By the way, remember a guy like Will Rogers from Mississippi State? He announced he's leaving. Didn't say if he's going pro or if he's officially in the portal, but that's the kind of name. We're going to get so many big names over these next couple months. Keep an eye out. Couple weeks. Transfer portal. A lot going on.